Hello and welcome to the Planner Pals podcast, a podcast hosted by two true Planner Pals. My name is Mark and I go by Mark Your Pages.
And I'm Jess, or Jessie Corinne, and one of our favorite episodes from last year, at least one of my favorites, was putting down our predictions for the planner year ahead. What was going to be popular, what was maybe going out of style, any kind of trends we foresaw coming. I don't actually know how accurate our predictions were. I don't think we necessarily made predictions that were the easiest to collect data for. I'm pretty sure that one of mine was the idea of like the rise of stamps. I don't know if stamps have actually made a comeback though.
I mean, stamps have always been there. I think everyone's just terrified of them as we talk about so many like stationery that's kind of like outside of the normal. And then they kind of bring them in, you try them and you like them. So I would say like that one was great. There's a lot more stamps out there. We saw, companies like Archer and Olive really, go all in on that and come out with a lot of like cool accessories and stamps for every season. So I think it's a little bit of everything. So we were kind of on point. I just love the fact that it's like generating these new ideas. What are other people seeing out there in the community, not just ourselves? It really kind of broadens my horizon.
Exactly. And so, of course, we had to ask the Planner Pal community what their predictions were. So in today's episode, we're going to be going through not only the predictions you gave us, but also some of our own ones. We're going to have a look through and consider, do we agree? Do we foresee this being in the future? Or are we maybe not too sure about it? But Mark, what was one of the first predictions we had?
Yeah, so one of the first ones is kind of this mix between what has been happening and maybe trying something a bit different, at least when it comes to notebooks and planners. It was switching from either a pre-printed or predated into a DIY, or the opposite, where you've had a DIY one you've been doing for a while and you're kind of giving that a break and moving into a predated or pre-planned. So it's just kind of this little bit of a switch up that we're going to see happen more. Perhaps this is just people getting more experimental with how they plan and how they journal and what they're doing. Or maybe you're like Jess and I, and you sometimes just like to try different things for the fun of it, invest your money into it, see that it doesn't work in like a month and then go back to old normal. I mean, I feel like for myself, that's very similar to what I tend to do. I see all the cool, shiny stuff out there and all the new ways of people doing planning, whether it is predated or different type of paper or sizes or whatever that might be. And then I get like very excited about it. And I'm like, well, I want to try that now. So I totally see that way. That's a good prediction. I know for myself, like I'm not going to be going that route this year, but it's a good prediction for other people. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that especially last year, towards the end of the year, we were seeing a lot of people in their DIY systems like Bullet Journal, Franken's planners or whatever and such, going towards something that was kind of more pre-printed structure and such. And I do also wonder if this prediction more so just comes from like the space you're already in. Like if you're a Happy Planner person, you follow a lot of Happy Planner content and such, and you see Happy Planner content creators saying, oh, I'm changing my system, I'm moving to insert different type of planner here, then I can see why the prediction would be that there's a lot of people moving away from whatever you're currently in. Because I know that for bullet journaling was big last year. We seem to have a lot of people jumping ship to something that was pre-printed. But I think that your point about experimentation is right on the nose. Like, I think that that's definitely it. And as people get more kind of seasoned with planning, as they get more kind of, I don't know, solid in what works for them and what doesn't, they might find different styles that are a little bit not necessarily in keeping with the one they've been using for however long, that are going to possibly work better for them because they know more about themselves as a planner and what is going to work. I think in terms of the experimentation front, that definitely relates to the next prediction, which is the downfall of the A5. A lot of people seem to reckon that the A5 is out and other sizes are in. So maybe bringing in more squares or more B6s. I personally believe that there's going to be a rise in B6 only for the fact that it seems to sell out so dang quickly with every Archer and Olive release now.
Yeah, it's one of those sizes that people get really excited about. You've talked about it a lot with some of your journals being inside of there. It's like, well, I don't have a ton to write. It's actually less than an A5. I definitely don't need a B5 or anything larger than that. So it's kind of going the other way without going to like a full pocket size, which to me is like, what can you even write inside of a pocket notebook, right? Like I'm not writing that little. I've been very curious about it. I did buy one with the most recent sale to like think about it. Like I bought it to look at it kind of. I was like, oh, maybe I'll use you for something. But I think it is a really good option. And I love this idea of, moving away from an A5 or trying something a bit different. I mean, as a square lover myself, having played with bigger sizes and smaller sizes, I think for me, square is like the perfect little space right now, to be honest, because I always say it's like the height of an A5, but the width of a B5. So it's like if you like to write long or do two columns on your page, page versus one, it's a really good size. I know I also heard from the community that, people are like, yeah, I like these smaller sizes, but like the traveler size is kind of it for me, whether that is a pre-bound notebook or an actual traveler's journal itself, like the actual brand. And then like really trying that size and saying, hey, this actually is working out for me, which I love because I'm all about the fringe sizes. I think they're more fun. I mean, yes, I have a crap ton of A5s, but my B5 and my square is growing. And the more and more I've been thinking about it, even from like our last conversation around trying something different this year, I think I might just be going with another square because I think it's kind of exactly what I need right now in my life.
Yeah, I do love a square, and I think that evidence towards people thinking about different sizes and such definitely was apparent on a poll I recently put up because I was like, oh, do I use an A5? Do I use a square? I'm not too sure. So I asked the community, and the majority did say square. Like on the video that I posted about it, it was just like square love the whole way through. On the actual poll with like numbers and such, it was more like a 60-40 kind of split, but it is nice to see a bit more enthusiasm coming in for those fringe sizes. Only if the companies keep up with it, though. The companies need to make sure that they don't run out so that we can still get our notebooks.
I remember when Square was brand new, like it was never seen before. It wasn't actually, I think my very first Square one was from Arch and Olive when they released those, but I think it was a different company before them that had done it. And I was so intrigued by that size. I thought that was the absolute coolest. I was like, I've never seen anything like that. Like, yes, it's bigger to have to carry around, but for me, I'm not doing that, right? So like it really worked out. And I remember the very first time I tried it and like set up a spread, it was like, yeah, this is different. I had to rethink my whole like mental grid space of how I had been doing things, but it felt so good. I always say like there's so much more room for activities, like there was a lot more you could do with that space, whether it was writing or trackers or kind of, using like bigger size stickers inside of there, bigger size stamps, but still having enough room in there to also write and kind of do your journaling part made me feel really good about it.
No, I definitely agree. It is nice to have that extra space. But what was the next prediction we got?
All right, so I loved this one so much. It was actually one that I was thinking about too. And then when someone else from the community was like, I think that this is going to happen, I was like, ooh, let's really hope. The idea is that more notebook companies, in this case it was specifically Archer and Olive, will come out or develop a more fountain pen friendly notebook. So this is something obviously that I've been like bitching about for the past few months, right? Especially as I've been using fountain pens more inside of my bullet journals over the years, and kind of taking that moment and saying like, okay, like yes, fountain pens can work inside of Arch and Olive notebooks or other notebooks as well. They do, but it's not really made for that, right? And it's not that it needs to be a very specific paper, but it also kind of does. It's like a very hard spot where it's like it can work, but it could be better kind of idea here. And so the idea that they might be doing that, and I thought about this a lot too, because this year, especially in the subscription boxes and a little bit last year, like we saw Archer and Olive start to lean into fountain pens and fountain pen ink. Now, I can't really remember this year if we really saw as much of that, honestly. So I don't know if maybe they were like trying it and then like they were like, nope, not really our space. Let's pull out, or maybe let's spend some time to do this right versus just kind of picking whatever. So it is what it is, but I would absolutely love to see that and find people like outside of, just like our standard Hobonichis or some of these other journals. I would love to see some of the other popular journal companies, playing around in that space a little bit more. I know like Julia here, for instance, she's actually pitched to them like some ideas herself. She was like, I think this would be great. I love this brand. I use fountain pens all the time, but I need a journal that's going to do this for me, right? And like, here are some ideas. Here's some paper samples that I think would work well. And I don't know whatever happened to it, but I do know that she did pitch it because, I mean, if anyone's going to pitch it, it might as well be her.
Yeah, the fountain pen enthusiasts. But no, I think that especially as we start to see, or at least personally I've started to see, I don't know if this is just because the algorithm's serving it up to me or whatnot, but it seems like we have a lot of creators who are now partnering with brands to make fountain pens and such, or like release custom ink colors and all of that kind of a thing. So if that continues, I feel like notebook companies are going to have to follow the trend of they're like, okay, more people are using fountain pens if we want to stay in the game. Not that I think anybody's going anywhere or whatnot. Yeah. Not everybody uses a fountain pen, but as they get more popular, and especially as we have some of our later on predictions are going to kind of note on this as well, but people using materials that last longer and such. And a fountain pen is definitely one of those things. So it's like, okay, I want the rest of my materials to be able to work with this, not against it.
Yeah, and I think with some, and this is specifically for Archer and Olive, when they do those, like, is it Heritage or it's the other brand, like the large heirloom. When they do those heirlooms, especially like the wide size one, like those are for writing, right? Those are essentially what those are for. And I feel like that is something that if you're going to put out a notebook, like that would be a great space to test it out. Right, with like a larger size notebook that's made for writing, do it on a lined notebook. Like I don't care, I kind of do, but I don't at the same time. Like I'll try to make it work inside of there if I have to. But I think like that's a good space to test it. We know Arch and Olive loves to do these tests. They do it inside of their subscription boxes. Like give me a subscription box that's very notebook and fountain pen honed in, and like give me a small notebook with that paper, let's see how it goes. Like I know that they love to do that, and so I hope by us like even just putting this out into the universe, that like that's just something that we have to like got to get out there, and fingers and toes crossed that we might see that in the future. Or what I love, a lot of people are also recommending a lot of that now too. Someone would just recommended a notebook to me recently and was like, Mark, I know you like fountain pens, I know you're not super happy with your current notebook performance, you should try one of these Hemlock and Oaks. And I was like, okay, I've never tried one before. I've heard about them, but I was like, click, add to cart, buy. It should be here in a day or two. To see, because other people are like, if you like these sizes and you like this paper quality, here's a really good mix. And maybe they're just doing it better. So we'll see what happens.
One thing that I do definitely wonder about is with a lot of, at least the ones that I've been receiving or whatnot recently, they have packaging on their journals or whatnot that says fountain pen friendly. And I wonder if it's almost like a buzzword. Like, does it even actually mean anything anymore? Or are you just relying on the fact that you have like a higher GSM of paper and that is what makes it fountain pen friendly? This is all just like I don't know, is it controversy? No, what's the word? The one where the people say things. Conspiracy theory. This is Jess's conspiracy theory. The one where people say things. Come on. But anyway, moving right the heck along, my next prediction was that we're going to see a rise of like area-specific journals. So in particular, the one that kind of comes to mind is reading journals, because I feel like every brand and their dog is releasing a reading journal right now. Or maybe, again, it's just the algorithm serving it up to me, because it's like, you want this. This is for you. But I think we're going to see ones in like, obviously reading, but also like health or finance or like kind of goal or life area specific ones that are actually released as like a pre-printed thing, and a lot more brands that haven't typically done those releasing their version of it.
That's interesting. I've seen a lot of them, I feel like recently, or maybe it was just printables, but definitely in the reading journal space. I mean, I feel like at Go Wild, we saw a lot of that, right? People were starting to develop workbooks and kind of how to build those out and things that are very specific to that niche of space. I love the idea. I think it's great. It's not for me necessarily, but I think for anybody who has ever custom made that type of notebook, I think the first time is a lot of fun. You're getting into it. You've got your stamps and your stickers and your ideas, and you're doing that. But I think after you get through your first one and you realize like how much went into that, it can be very helpful to then kind of pick up something that's already pre-done. It actually, I think, partners perfectly with the very first one, right? Which is this idea of like, yes, I DIY'd my first reading journal, but now there's a really good version of this, especially if it's from a brand where you already like the notebooks and the paper and the brand as a whole. And they're saying, hey, now I developed a reading journal. Like that, just like, well, that makes it really easy for me. Like I don't have to think about it too much to do that. So I think that's a really great space. I think also it shows brands are listening to the community. They see you when you're posting those things, when you're talking about it, when you're creating those pieces. So I think it's really exciting that, some brands are doing that. Like I said, well, it might not necessarily be for me or might not be for you, Planner Pal. It doesn't mean it's not for somebody else or someone like what a great gift to give somebody. You don't have to custom make a notebook. Again, a lot of work, but very thoughtful. Or you could buy something already pre-made and hand it them and be like, I know you would love this. I'm so excited for you.
Yeah, and I think that even if it's not necessarily you DIY'd your first one, realized the amount of work, and now you're getting a pre-printed, it could be you've seen other people DIY theirs. You're like, oh, I would love to, but that looks like a lot of work. And this is really a nice kind of easy step into that space. So it's like rather than setting up your own reading or finance journal or like whatever, you get a pre-printed one, use that, kind of discover what you do and don't like about it or what was missing for you. And then the next one is one that you DIY yourself. DIY yourself. Do it yourself. Come on, English. Who is she?
No, that I think DIY yourself is perfect because I saw it's exactly that. So you're all good there, and that's actually a really good point. I think that's maybe another way to think about it. With a lot of these other companies out there that make these journals, like Finisher's Secret, for instance, is one I've been seeing a lot of, and I've done some reviews over on my channel on. I think it's a really great way to get people into a journal and trying it out and doing it, to say, okay, like it's like training wheels, journaling training wheels, where it's like, okay, I'm going to lay out everything for you to kind of figure out and do it. I think Amanda Rach Lee does a really good job with her doodle planners. I'm thinking about that because I know she just launched hers for this year. But it's like, hey, if you like this style, you like to draw, you like to journal, you like to do all of this, but you're not feeling very confident in maybe the skill set just yet, here's a really great way to learn or do, or just kind of have the ideas there that maybe can help you on that next one if you want to take off the training wheels and kind of go out on your own, right? I think it's a really smart way to do it. And again, if you don't want to DIY it, don't. You've got something pre-made that's perfect for you, and you can't beat that.
Exactly. What was the next prediction that we had?
The next one, so I don't know if commonplace journal is just a term that I'm not familiar with. So this was definitely one from the community on this one. But the idea is we're going to see more commonplace journals and more customized journals. Now, customized journals, I know, but do you know, is commonplace a brand, or is it like a theme or a type? Because I don't know.
That is a theme or a type, I guess. It's essentially just like a little compendium of thoughts, feelings, snippets, all of that kind of a thing.
Okay.
So people would just kind of like bring it together as like their like life knowledge base. I think of a commonplace essentially as the analog second brain. So it's like
Okay.
anytime you kind of like hear a quote or like have a spark of inspiration or something, or like, learn something or whatever, it all goes into the commonplace. I know that people do have a tendency to kind of organize their commonplace in kind of like a chronological order, but then like using a color coding system or maybe a tabbing system or something like that, so you can actually find the information again. I have been mad curious about commonplacing. Like last year I was thinking like, oh, do I add one to my lineup? Like, would I like this? Because I do love to store little bits and pieces and notes and snippets and such that I find from, consuming media online or reading books or anything like that. But for me, it was just way more like makes sense to put it in Notion because it is just a lot more searchable and findable. But I do think that people have been getting more into commonplacing over the last year.
Gotcha. Well, that's super helpful for me. Thank you for educating me on that, because I was like, is this a brand I don't know about yet? But I think this is a really great way to also kind of go the opposite way. And this is why I love these things. It's like we just talked about everyone finding custom made planners that are already predated based off of topics. And then like the next one is like, I think everyone's just going to do it on their own now and figure it out. And I think that that's what's so fun about the planner space as we take a look at it. And this is also really important for me because, like I said, it kind of goes outside of like my immediate purview of what I'm seeing inside of the planner space too. So understanding that a bit more is very interesting. I think it's a really cool idea, like you said, especially if it gets down to like organizing your thoughts and doing that. Now, in my mind, I'm like, well, the bullet journal method does that inside of the index. Therefore, I don't need to color code to find it again. The index goes there. But I know from this podcast and you telling me very often, not everyone uses the index. So like, that's not helpful there. So if tabbing, color coding, all of that, very interesting, something to look into for myself. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think about this one? I mean, I know you just explained commonplace to me, but what do you think about kind of the other side of that, as like people really DIYing it even more in the new year?
Yeah, no, I don't. Let's see. I have had a couple comments from people saying, oh, I was in a pre-printed one this year and I've decided that like I don't like this rigid structure and I'm going back to DIY. But then we also have people saying like, oh, DIY is too much time, effort, and energy. I'm going back to pre-printed. So I think it's just like that kind of going against and with the stream, like depending on which way you look at it. So we've just got like migration on both sides, going from one to the other or other to the one. But I would be interested to like, not that we can get the statistical on that, survey the world and figure it out. But like, is there a kind of stronger stream, or is there like, more people going in one direction rather than the other? I think that though, for like the commonplacing in particular, I think that it's kind of hot right now. Like it is kind of like, popular right now in the same way that personal curriculums are really popular right now. But I also think that people are making personal curriculums that are really just reading lists, not actually a curriculum. So I'm just like, will people get into commonplacing thinking like, oh, this is a great idea and whatnot, but they're not actually quote, quote, doing commonplacing right? I'm not the commonplacing police, obviously. You probably heard my description of commonplacing on, she didn't even say it right. That's not even what it is. This is there. But anyway, I do wonder if people are going to kind of, romanticize the idea of commonplacing, like the idea of it, get into it, and then we're going to get to like halfway through January and they're just like, wah, wah. I'm just going to like put that to the side and ignore it.
Yeah, I think it's anytime you get into something that feels like a lot of work or something that's popular. I mean, we saw it with the bullet journal, for years as people got into it more. It was brand new. Everybody had one. They were all defining it themselves, trying to figure it out. We saw Ryder Carroll try to take that back very hard. I feel like in a very like immediate way this year, which I think pushed people away from the bullet journal method. It was like, let me love you and everyone. And then it's like, get back to the basics. And you're just like, well, wait a second, hold on. I mean, I think as much as we talk about notebooks and brands and things like that, these methods as well that get into it, especially if there's a face or a person or a brand behind it, you have to feel comfortable inside of that and in doing that. And a lot of times it does take some setup to get there. It does take some organization. But I always like to remind people when they're like, this wasn't quite for me, or I don't get it. It's new. And you at some point have made a decision where you have to try something new because what you're doing is not working for you. So it's like, give it more than a month. I think usually I say like 3 months, give it a quarter and really get into it. I think by that point, you're a few months in, you've really lived it, you've experienced it, and then you can make a decision. I know some people get on me, they're like, how can you make, a decision off of whether or not you liked a system in a week, Mark, when you're like, I tried a new system for a week and it didn't work for me. I'm like, well, I've been doing this for a while. I know what does work for me, and I can get a really good vibe on another system or another notebook or whatever it might be quickly now. But for those who haven't tried other ideas or other plans or experimented, it might be a little bit more difficult for you. So give it a little bit more time, though, I think is like usually my like idea, especially when it's involved, because it takes more time to build that out.
Yeah, and I think that like if you're coming from a place of like very good understanding of yourself as a person, it can be a lot easier to figure out what will or won't work for you even before you start sometimes. So for instance, with commonplacing, given that interest and the idea of like, everybody's sharing their commonplace and now I want to do a commonplace and such, I did have to check myself and be like, yeah, but you're not going to keep up with that. Like, you don't like writing for one thing, so come on, you're not going to go and like, handwrite all of these quotes or whatever from materials you had.
Yeah.
You've already tried having a notes book before, and while it did work, it was fine. You just found that you preferred to take all of that down digitally. One, you can type faster than you can handwrite, and two, it's searchable after the fact, and three, you're going to be using it on a computer anyway, so it might as well be on the computer. So by knowing those things about yourself and knowing how you kind of like typically operate as a planner or your kind of tendencies and whatnot, and comparing the potential of the new system to the stuff that you already know about yourself, you can make informed decisions faster, which is really nice. Or if you get into it and start experimenting with it and really kind of take a step back and reflect on that process and say, okay, what did work? What was good? What is missing? What is lacking? What are my aversions? All of those kind of things. Being honest with yourself, then you can make those kind of like, I don't know, just like a faster realization of what will or won't work for you.
Yeah, well, our next few topics we're getting into is interesting because I think people are being a lot more conscious about where they're spending their time and their money, and rightfully so. So why don't you kick into the next one of the next prediction from the Planner Pals, because I want 100% back these.
Yeah, the next prediction we had from a lot of people was the idea of like shopping your stash or using what you have, just especially as, money be moneying, economy being an economy and all of that, just trying to save money as the price of things increase. So really kind of having that focus on what do I have, what can I use that I've already kind of got in my space, in my system, rather than acquiring new things. And I would definitely agree with this one, which I do wonder, based on this, are we going to see a kind of like rise again of people drawing more for decoration in their journal rather than stickering? Or if we are going to see stickering, is it going to be like, I bought digital stickers and I printed them myself, so that then it's like I don't have to go and buy like a new sticker kit. It's something that I already had kind of like in my ecosystem. I know some people are like major digital sticker kind of collectors and such, and they'll like buy those sticker packs and they'll print them off time and time again. Or it could be, for instance, what I do, like making my own headers, rather than trying to, go and find stickers that align with the stuff that I want to put in my journal or the headers that I want to have. I just type them up, make them myself, and print them off on sticker paper. Like, yes, you still have to acquire the sticker paper, but that is significantly cheaper than pre-made sticker packs.
Absolutely. I love this one very much so. And it's probably hard because people are like, Mark, it seems as if you're getting new stuff all the time. And I'm like, yeah, but like a lot of that stuff, like I'm not buying with my own money. It's like through affiliate sales or store credits or whatever else. But I'm kind of in the same boat now. Like when I am purchasing something for myself, I am actually taking a moment now and saying, like, do I actually need that? Even with that Hemlock and Oak notebook, I was like, do I really need it because I have so many other notebooks just sitting here ready to be used? And I was like, but I really, for me, want to try because it feels like the right thing. I've heard a lot of good things, so I'm going to give it a go. So I'm like, okay, that is. But like new pens and stuff like that, I've actually just been going behind me recently and almost like blindly running my hand and being like, stop here. Oh, I haven't used this in a while. Just to be like, oh, yeah, I really did like the way that that pen worked. I really did like the way that that ink looked. I really did like, this material I haven't used in a while. It's like maybe I used it too much and got sick of it. Well, now time to like bring it back out. So I think it's one of those deals like, really being like picky and choosy about when you are choosing to purchase something. And I think it's also realizing that we do have a lot of this stuff already. Maybe we just put it in a box or a drawer. Time to go through that box or that drawer. A great way to do that at the end of the year and be like, hey, I forgot that I had this, flake sticker pack. Let's go ahead and use that instead of like trying to buy something else.
Yeah, and as somebody who has previously like pretty much never done a theme twice, or if I do the theme twice, it's usually like a completely new take on it. I found that this year I have repeated themes at least 3 or 4 times, which for me is a lot. I thought it was quite funny actually. For my new journal setup for 2026, both my reading journal and my everyday journal are essentially the same themes that I used last year in those systems, but switched. So the reading journal theme from last year is now my everyday journal theme for next year, and vice versa for the other one. But it just meant that I could actually use the supplies I already had. I know that I like them. I enjoyed that theme last time. So just like lean into the joy. More journaling. There we go. That's a prediction. More journaling always.
Yeah, I 100% back that. And I think it is like if you can enjoy that, you bought it for a reason. I have to remind myself of this. Like you bought it for a reason. Like let's go ahead and just start using that until it's gone. And then if you need to replace it, hopefully you can. You can. If not, it's okay. You got plenty more in the stash.
That idea of like look back with fondness and like in appreciation that it happened rather than looking back and being like, wow, I wish I still had that thing. That's me and my washi tapes.
My goodness. Well, speaking of having lots of things, especially when it comes into washi tapes, one of the things we heard about a prediction kind of goes the opposite side of washi tapes, which is people starting to spend money on quality over quantity. I don't mean that washi tapes are not quality, but we know that you can get like 50 rolls for like $3 in some places. So I thought about this one and I heard this one from a few people. One of them is someone who did get into fountain pens and like cursed me, but loved me at the same exact time. And they were just like, look, I'm buying all these different pens that I think I'm going to like, but like, I like this idea of buying one fountain pen that I can fill with different types of inks. And I was like, well, that's what they're here for. Like, that's a great way to experience writing and a great way to do that. So, it's instead of going out and buying like a giant pack of pens, just buying one pen that you can use over and over again. There's a little bit of excitement to that, but there's also like, do I get bored with that? But I think it also comes down into notebooks as well. So a few people that I heard from said, like, no longer will I be buying my journal from the dollar store or for Five and Below or like an arts and craft store. I'm going to go ahead and I'm ready to invest in a nicer notebook. And we've all been there. I was there at one point, where you're just like, okay, this is the cheap one. I'm going to just do it in here. And then the pages start to fall out or, you bleed through the pages or whatnot. And then you come across and you see all these binder notebooks, but you're like, I can't spend $35 on a notebook. That seems like a lot of money. But the way I like to look at it is like, okay, but if you're going through several of those notebooks because they're not quite working out for you or they're falling apart, at $5 a piece, 3 or 4 of those, and then you're a hop, skip, and a jump away from like that nicer notebook. And I know, again, for me, from personal experience, this was a really big thing. I remember I bought that Leuchtturm notebook. The very first one was like $18. And I was like, who the hell is spending $18 on a notebook? And then I remember trying my very first Archer Olive and like holding my breath and biting my tongue as I was like $35. But I loved the outcome of that. I loved the paper. I love how it worked. It made me so happy. And then, that just kind of snowballed into what it is now, though. What do you think about that? Do you think that it's more of a quality over quantity game as we move into the new year, or do you think people are just going to keep doing what they've been doing?
I think that it's going to be material dependent. I reckon that we'll probably see a rise of quality over quantity when it comes to, well, I guess, for the items that you only buy once. So you were never really buying all that much in terms of quantity to start with. But I do think that for staples and things that don't necessarily get consumed or used up, those non-consumable items, I think that people will probably either upgrade the ones they have when they break, or realize hey, if I'm going to be using this for a hot minute, then I might as well go with something that is a little bit more lasting. It is a better material. So I'm thinking things like, sticker tweezers, scissors, rulers that aren't all crackled up and janky and such, they're just made out of better materials and such, so they are going to last better, because it's a one and done purchase in theory, unless you lose it or you roughhouse it up the wazoo and it breaks or something like that. But it just means that, first of all, it makes the process more enjoyable. Journaling, because you don't have to kind of fight with a supply that is good enough to work, but it's actually not good enough to be enjoyable to use. And I think that also will just along with adding more joy, it will save you money in the long run, because you don't have these kind of El Cheapo supplies that just break after 3 uses, and then you either go buy another one or then go and buy the more expensive one, whereas you could have just bought the more expensive one to start with.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I think it's when someone buys those really nice craft scissors and you use them to cut paper, and someone's like, "Don't you dare do that!" It's those are really nice for a reason. They're supposed to last long, handle more materials than your dollar store brand that you kind of go with. So I think that's all about that, very much so. I'm excited to see what happens this year, if people actually follow through on this prediction or not. Like I said, I know for myself, I've been doing that more with a lot of quality materials, as I'm just nope, not going to go buy them from the dollar store and use them once. I'm going to go and invest in something nicer that's going to kind of hold on a little bit longer. All right, what's the next one that you got?
So the next one is also kind of about money related stuff, but not necessarily about the purchasing, but more so the idea that we're going to see more finance and budgeting related layouts in people's journals as they're starting to be more money conscious. I know that I personally won't be part of this trend, mainly because I don't do math on paper, I do math in Excel, so I get it to add everything up for me. But I think that people are going to be a little bit more money conscious about, their kind of hobbies, stationery, all of that type thing. And part of that might be setting up some kind of no spend or no buy type challenge. It could be setting up an expense log or something like that, a savings tracker. That being said, I did actually just set up a savings tracker, so I am part of the trend. Yay, part of it. What do you reckon?
I think it's going to be a very big deal. And like you said earlier, because the economy, things are more expensive, all of those things come into play. I think that those will probably be very popular spreads this year, because people are going to be trying to figure out, how do I afford certain things? Especially here in the US, there's a lot that's going on with just food stamps and people who can't afford to eat. There's a government shutdown. People aren't getting paid. So you have to think differently about how you're spending your money. I was out just the other day, actually, at the vet, as a weird place to be. And the woman next to me, basically was picking and choosing what medicines to get for her pet, because she's well, my husband's in the military. He's not getting paid right now. So we're going to forego this for right now because we need to afford this. And this is very much different when you're talking about personal health and family health versus stationary. But I think that if you're trying to figure that out for yourself and pick and choose and budget, sometimes writing it down is the right way to do it. What's coming in and what's going out, whether that's in Excel or just on a piece of paper, you have to do that at some point. So I absolutely think that's going to be something that we're going to have to do. It doesn't make me happy that we're having to do that. I'm hopeful that a lot of this will come out of a necessity and turn into something that's maybe more in the positive as we go forward. But this is a great way to try it out, to see how it works, and then hopefully be able to utilize what you've learned by doing this in another space.
Yeah, and even if it's not necessarily something that is a necessity, you feel very much you have to keep on top of your finances and such, and you're really penny pinching and such to make it so that you can make things happen, ends meet, all of that kind of thing. It is just good to know more about your financial health and be more aware of where your money is going and such. The number of times that I've gone to my account and just been wait a second, wasn't this number higher before? And it's just because, a bill came out or whatnot that I just forgot about. The nice part about being myself and being a forgetful person like that sometimes is sometimes surprises are fun, but more that I try and make sure that all of my bills are set up on auto pay, because otherwise you get another statement being like, ma'am, ma'am, where's your money? I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm sorry about that. I'll just put it on the auto pay, and then future Jess won't have to worry about this.
Yeah, absolutely. So something else that we saw just this year, which I feel like I've seen more of this happening, but I know at the same time we got the counter this. People are like, I'm going to see more journaling happening with drawing and painting, all of this. I did see a lot of people who are saying this upcoming year, I'm going to foresee or think that a lot of people are going to kind of go that opposite way, maybe a little bit more minimalist, or just maybe kind of more basic in their approach. Again, it could be just from, having too many or not being able to buy a lot of stationery, or just trying something different, kind of like bringing down all of the things that could potentially happen on a page and just really get down to the brass tacks. Here's what's happening. Here's my task. Here's my notes. I mean, I know I've done that too. I have to sometimes remind myself, like, Mark, make this look a little bit more fun. Like, this is supposed to be a fun thing for us. So I definitely see that more. I've heard from a lot of people, especially if you've been overwhelmed in the past about like the DIY planning and like over purchasing kind of all the things all on a single page, breaking that down. I always say, like, you can still be fun and functional at the same exact time. You don't have to have a ton of stuff on there to be able to be like, oh, okay, this works for me. You can do some very basic things and make it look fun, but have it be very functional and do exactly what you need to do. So this is definitely a trend that I can see happening more in the new year. People trying it, kind of taking it back a step or two, and then seeing what they do. But as a person I know who's, went from one extreme to the other, like, what do you think about this one?
I reckon that I do foresee us seeing less drawing, because I feel like we're already kind of on that trend at the moment. But I don't necessarily foresee less decoration. What I think is going to happen is that we're just going to get to, like, more extremes. So we're going to see more minimal that's like truly minimal, and we're going to see more decorative that's like quite decorative. It just might not necessarily be decorative in the sense of drawing. So I think that, like, we have the rise of junk journaling. I swear that this is happening, and I feel like people are going to experiment with that more in their planners rather than making separate junk journals, just to kind of like test the waters a little bit, see if that is a process they like, see if that's a style of memory keeping they like. Whereas we're also going to get more of that kind of like minimalist, like, very kind of bare bones basic kind of thing, not so much the like decorative heavy, or if it is decoration, it's going to be those kind of like smaller touches, like maybe a colored header or some nice line work or something like that. So I kind of see it more as like a polarizing on the decorative spectrum.
No, it makes total sense. I think it will see it too. And I think it's more exciting too, is like if you're taking it down a lot and maybe trying something by hand. Like, again, a lot of people like, I can't draw. I'm like, cool, but you can do this easy lettering. It still looks fun. You can still take a marker and put a little drop shadow under your box and still looks fun and exciting without having to like do a whole like illustration on your page as well. I think it's fun to experiment, and sometimes like those baby steps are really great ways to do it, which might lead you to a spot where you want to do more of the other kind of way of doing it, or just build on those basics. That's kind of like how I see it. I see a lot of people maybe haven't tried it before but want to give it a go, but don't want to go in all the way. All right, Jess, what's the next one you got from the community? What is a planner prediction for next year?
So one that I definitely foresee as being something that happens is the idea of just leaning into brands and kind of like a focus on, putting your money into brands that share values that you share. So that could be around the idea of like eco-friendly or eco-conscious brands, ones who are using like recycled materials, or they have like fully recyclable materials that they're making or something like that. It could be around the idea of like avoiding materials that use computer generated imagery and such. That's something that people are quite passionate about as well. So making sure that your kind of purchases align with the values that you hold, that's something that I foresee is going to be happening next year.
Yeah, I think it's really important. We've talked about that, like why people stick with certain brands and what they're doing and why they're doing what they're doing. And I think that it really does make a big difference. For me, it's always been very big. I love when I can align myself with the brand, especially if they have products that I like, if they're doing cool things, experimenting, doing all of that. And it really kind of hurts my feelings when it goes the other way. And I'm like, why? Why are you excluding people? Like, this is supposed to be a very inclusive space. This doesn't need to be, yes, do it this way, don't do it this way. Or like, let's be more open-minded to it, right? Let's try try different things. I think that's why a lot of people do kind of pick and choose. There was a number of ones that didn't make it into the episode today, but there was like brands I've never heard of before. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool to like go down that route. Like maybe there's someone new doing something different. So I think even just like listening to more than just like, what is the thing that I have, but like, who's the brand that's making it? Who's the person or the people behind it? Do I align with what they're doing and how they're doing it? And if not, to be like, yeah, this isn't really my kind of thing. I mean, it's a consumer product at the end of the day. Like there's plenty of other notebooks and stationery out there. Let's be real, right? Like, so if something's not feeling right, kind of gives you the ick, it's okay to try something different because you'll probably find something else out there that you really like a lot more.
Yeah, and so I think that we will also, as part of this, see a rise of brands putting their brand values or the kind of like things that they stand for more at the forefront, so people can make those conscious decisions about like, oh, I'm going to support XYZ because they support ABC. So it'll be nice to see more of that kind of summarized in maybe their marketing materials or just on their websites and stuff like that. So it's a lot more kind of upfront in your face, so that making those choices can be a lot easier, especially when it comes to like computer generated art and such. Sometimes it's hard to tell. Like, you know, there are tells and such about whether something has or hasn't been made by a real people versus a computer people, quote, quote. But I think that being able to say with confidence that something is or isn't because the brand has put out, yeah, we, 100% design our designs. Like, this is by real people in the back on their graphics tablet, pushing this out for you, versus we typed in some things into the ChatGPT and the ChatGPT gave us this picture of a flower.
Yeah, usually you just look for like any type of human that has more than like the normal number of digits. That's usually a big tell. And then any type of wording usually is like does not mean anything. And I know like at first glance we don't see that. And I'm always like, ugh, like as an artist myself, I'm like iffy about it. There are AI functionality that make it a lot easier to do what we do. But when someone's just like blasting out designs because they want them to buy it and it's not quite it, like again, you have to align yourself with it and say, I'm either okay with it or I'm not, and honestly, at the end of the day, like you don't have to say it out loud if you don't want to, like it kind of maybe could get you in trouble. So like no shade, like you do you, but just know like you have to make that decision and feel okay with it at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think that even being able to tell nowadays, because like, yeah, we used to be able to rely on, does she have like way too many fingers or like 2 rows of teeth or something like that. But it's crazy how much better it has gotten in such a short amount of time. So nowadays, the ones that I'm really looking for is the intricacies. Is like, would a human person go to the effort to put this level of detail in for this type of product? Because oftentimes, if it's like a roll of tape with like hardcore intricate details and such, probably not. Or if they did, then I should be paying a lot more for it. But what was your next prediction?
So the last one that we're going to go over today just cracked me up because this one came from a few people and I just was like laughing. The prediction is that after January, these people are no longer going to use their journals anymore. Like this age old, I bought the thing, I made the thing, I planned to use the thing and do it. I did it for a few weeks. It didn't work out for me. And now I'm abandoning this, 1 month in. This is why when we spoke a few episodes ago about like testing things out and trying them, you actually said it to me. You're like, Mark, this is actually the best time to test and do because you've actually got a few months until you really technically have to like choose for the new year. And that's exactly what I've been doing. And it's been really awesome to be able to sit back and like take a week at a time and try something different because I want to go into the new year knowing like I've made the right choice, right? I've invested, I've paid the money, I've done the thing, I've given the time, and I want it to pay off for me at the end of the year. I want to be able to use my fountain pens inside of my notebooks this year and be happy about each week as I flip the page, right? Like that's a really big thing I'm looking for this year for myself just because of what I like to do. Someone else, it might look totally different, right? You might want a certain type of paper or grid or dot or lined or whatever that looks like. Give it a go before you pick and choose so you don't get to this point. But I still think it was just hilarious to see like, yeah, my planning prediction is that I'm not going to be using it after the start of the year because that happens every year.
Yeah, especially when you see these people putting out their like, journal lineup or planner stack or whatever. It's like, oh yeah, here are like the 26 different notebooks I'm going to use. No shade, not really, okay? Like if you want to use 26 notebooks and they all have a purpose and you're happy, go forth, be merry about it. But I do wonder if we get a kind of like, influencing. People see these fat stacks of planners and go, oh, okay, well, maybe I should add some more into my system. And they do, and they have great intentions. And I'm not calling you out on this because I do this, all right? Know that this is me as well. But we put together these stacks of different journals and planners and such we're going to use. And then the reality sets in. Like we get to January 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 10th, and we realize, okay, yeah, in the day-to-day actually using this, it's a no from me. I think that the ones most at risk are usually the ones that are like completely new in some way. So for instance, like the 5-year journal, if you haven't done daily memory keeping like that, where you do have to like do a daily touch on that notebook, then that's probably at risk of wah wah, unless you have some really good implementation intentions around that. You're like, at this time, in this place, I will sit down and write my notes. I've got that for my one, so it has actually survived, which is nice. But there are plenty journals that I have set up, started with like, yep, this is going to be the thing. I'm going to be using this for the rest of the year or several years. And now they're just relics of a time past. I'm thinking like my notes book, my language learning journal, my travel journal, half of my R&D journals that I started off with great intentions and then realized the paper was wah wah and decided that I wasn't going to use it anymore. Or my first long-term collections journal that I was like, yep, this is going to be the one. This is going to be my like reference book of all of the materials that I need for the rest of forever. And again, then I decided the paper sucked and I set up a new one. And then I set up a new one when I decided I didn't like that one anymore. And then I moved everything to Notion. And eventually I'll probably move everything out of Notion and just keep it in a notebook under my bed or something. But it's all good. If you start something with good intentions, like, yep, this is going to be the notebook that changes it all for me. This is going to be the one that does everything. And it doesn't work out. You're allowed to be a learner. You're allowed to take time to figure out your system and find things that work for you. Just make sure you're honest with yourself when something is or isn't working.
Yeah, and then you go and you find other uses for it on something else. Jess and I both have great videos of that over on the YouTube channels on like how to reuse a journal that, maybe is halfway done, or you only used a month. What do you do with the rest of it? And there's other planners too outside of that do that than just us. But why not self promote ourselves while we're here? But we'd love to hear from you, Planner Pals, on these topics, whether you agree or disagree with some of these predictions for the new year, or maybe we didn't mention yours, or you've got one that you've just been seeing a ton online. Make sure you let us know. We'd love to hear from you, whether it's in the comments, if you're watching this on YouTube or over on Spotify, or if you're listening, you can also drop comments over on Spotify too. And you can always hit us up over on our email address, right? We love checking those emails, responding to you there, plannerpalspodcast@gmail.com. And of course, over on all of our socials at Planner Pals Podcast.
I'm very much curious to see which ones you agree with, disagree with, or just general predictions, because I do think it's a lot of fun, like future casting, thinking about what may or may not happen. I don't think, again, that we've made any predictions that actually have, accurate ways to measure them, so we shan't be doing any kind of check-in to be like, were we right? But I am very excited to read your thoughts, Planner Pals, and as always, thanks for watching.